Hi, I'm Dave Bundy, editor of the Lincoln Journal-Star, and this is our editorial board endorsement interview with Adam Morfeld, candidate for Lancaster County Attorney. Adam's going to do a lot of talking in just a minute, but we'll have Kent do a tiny bit now. Kent, who are you and why do readers care?
I'm Kent Walgamot. I'm not sure why readers care, but I write about arts and entertainment. I've been on the editorial board for more than 10 years. So we've done this before in a different form.
All right. And Adam, we are grateful to have you with us. We have interviewed you before for legislative things. So slightly different set of questions here. To start off, this is a chance for you to introduce yourself. So why do you want to be the county attorney, and what experiences and attributes have you had that, and do you have that would help you serve in this role?
Yeah, so all good questions, and I'll try to answer it as succinctly as possible. The reason why I want to be Lancaster County Attorney is I think public safety is one of the most important things that we can do as a government, and particularly as a member of the Judiciary Committee for the last 8 years in the legislature. So my big focuses are going to be public safety, transparency, and accountability. And I can go into detail on, how we're going to achieve each three of those and do things a little bit differently. But in terms of an experience is, as an attorney that's founded and currently administers a legal advocacy organization, regularly manages and assists litigation teams, supervise an agency currently over with 80 full-time staff, which is more than the Lancaster County Attorney's Office, 80 full and part-time staff. I feel like I'm ready to lead, and I've litigated and argued before the Nebraska Supreme Court. And as a senator on the Judiciary Committee, I've introduced or amended criminal law, civil procedure, child support enforcement, civil matters pertaining to counties, civil commitments, and essentially anything that deals with the power of local government. So these are all issues that I'm well versed in, that I have worked on, and that I'm ready to tackle in the Lancaster County Attorney's Office.
All right. Well, I'm sure that you'll get to it because you sort of hinted at the different areas that you're interested in. Maybe this next question is that entry point for you. How do we make the justice system work better for everyone in the community, or is it working the way it is?
Well, I mean, first off, we have to have people at the top that want to make the criminal justice system work better for our community. And quite frankly, that's one of the main reasons why I'm running. After 8 years of being on the Judiciary Committee, the common denominator of why we cannot get common sense criminal justice reform passed, criminal justice reforms that have been proven to work in other states, reducing population, increasing public safety, and having better outcomes in terms of reducing recidivism. The reason why we can't get those passed is, quite frankly, because of the person that's currently in this office, and that's my opponent, Pat Condit. He's the president of the County Attorneys Association, which is a very powerful kind of under-the-radar advocacy group down at the Capitol that has really led the charge against pretty much all criminal justice reform in the Nebraska legislature, and I've seen it firsthand. And so that's the first thing, is we have to have leaders in offices like this that want to achieve criminal justice reform, and not just talk about it and open up a few problem-solving courts and make the criteria so narrow that really nobody can get in for the most part, which is currently the case. So that's to answer your first question. How we're actually going to do that, I think, was what you're getting to with the first and the second question a little bit. So first, when somebody breaks the law, I think Nebraskans everybody expects that there's accountability, right? But what we're really lacking right now is systems in place and leadership to provide for reconciliation and rehabilitation. And that's really the crux of criminal justice reform and what we've been trying to pass in the legislature, but what we can enact almost unilaterally in the county attorney's office. So what does that mean? First, every single person that gets into the system on the county level, we need to have a risk and needs assessment for each of those individuals. are they going to be a risk to themselves or others? Right now, they only get that if it's court ordered and if it's requested. I think everyone should go through that because it's estimated, we don't know because we don't do assessments for everybody, but it's estimated by many people that in our jail right now, up to 50% of the population in our jail is not a risk to themselves or anyone else. They simply have a mental health or a substance abuse issue, and they would be much more successful having some accountability, but also being in, for instance, a community corrections or community release program. And then that way they can be bettering themselves while they're awaiting their court date. And second, they can also be getting the treatment and the help that they need, and they can provide for themselves and their family if they have a family. So that's the first thing that we're going to do right away, is make it so that everyone goes and has a risk and needs assessment so we can determine what their risk or their needs are. Second, also having a victim support unit. One of the things that has surprised me the most since I announced for this office 2 years ago is how many victims came to me, and at least 3 or 4 of them have said kind of the same thing in different ways, which is the only thing worse than the crime that was committed against me was having to work with the Lancaster County Attorney's Office and being treated like a perpetrator rather than a victim. And that's really disappointing. And that's putting it lightly, quite frankly. And so we are going to make sure that every single person in the county attorney's office is trained in making sure that they understand how to take a victim-centered approach. And we also are going to be able to bring in wraparound services for victims as well. Services such as social workers, other types of community resources as well, because oftentimes victims right now are kind of just treated as folks who we really need to be able to testify to what we need to charge that individual. And really what we need to be doing is also providing victims the support that they need and the opportunity, if the victim wants it, for reconciliation with the perpetrator of the crime as well, because that's been shown to also reduce recidivism and be a good community corrections approach. The other things that we're going to do, and I'll try to be a little bit quicker because I know we just have a half hour.
That's okay. You're
okay.
running right on schedule.
Is this what we're looking for? Okay, cool.
Yeah,
just cut me off.
You're covering a couple of questions right now. So
okay. Well, I'll just keep going. I mean, also, in addition to the risk assessment and needs screening, and then also the victim services unit that we'll create, also investing more resources in solving violent crimes. So far, this county attorney has been really focused on charging minor nonviolent crimes as felonies. So things like drug residue possession, for a long time, just simple marijuana possession. So like THC gummies and things like that as felonies. But they're still also charging simple residue cases as automatic felonies too. So really what I want to do is start refocusing some of our resources into community corrections, but then also reallocating some of those resources, quite frankly, to things like, for instance, ending the rape kit backlog. The Lancaster County Attorney's Office, he is the chief law enforcement officer of the county. They can take leadership on this, where they wanted to devote time and resources with prosecution. They're able to also help figure out ways to devote time and resources to other types of crimes like sexual assaults, violent crimes, things like that. I think that that's where our focus needs to be, along with the rehabilitation and other types of mental health and substance abuse services. And so that's also going to be a focus of mine as well. In addition, advocating for common sense criminal justice reform, the stuff that we've been advocating down at the Capitol for a while, the things like Senator Lathrop brought. Right now, the County Attorneys Association has always been a roadblock and not a partner in that work. They've come up with a million different reasons that make no sense to oppose these measures. We need to have a Lancaster County attorney that, one, is in sync with the county, which this current Lancaster County attorney is not by all intents and purposes, and somebody who's willing to come to the table as a good faith partner to try to get some of these criminal justice reform packages passed. Because right now, Lancaster County is the driver of mass incarceration in our state, whether we want to admit that or not. The data bears that out. And we need somebody who is going to be reasonable and sensible and work with statewide solutions. And that's been the biggest barrier that I've seen as a lawmaker, is not having really anybody in the County Attorneys Association that is providing a different perspective and willing to come to the table in good faith. So that's something else I'll do. I'll touch on 2 other things real quick, the transparency and accountability prongs. So first off, The day that I get elected, we are going to start working to find somebody who's a public guardian, or for otherwise known as an ombuds person, who will be in the office to, one, field complaints from the public, two, be able to take all of our data in the office and make it public. Right now, you cannot find this data. I have requested very simple data and received a $30,000 invoice for the public records request. I think the Journal-Star has, maybe not with the county attorney's office, but also had problems trying to get information from state agencies. This is all information that should be on our website. How many people are we charging with what? What is the actual final conviction? What types of community corrections programs do we have? And what are the recidivism rates? These are not things that the public should, one, have to ask for, and two, when they ask for it, not have the data readily available and then be charged exorbitant amounts of money for it. It's also important data for policymakers, whether on the county or the local level, and then also in the legislature to know. So that's what we're going to do, is we're going to open the offices of the county attorney's office and make it public. What's going on, what's working, what's not working, and make sure that that data is regularly updated online. So that's one thing. Also, advocating for the Prosecutorial Transparency Act. That's something that I introduced that my opponent opposed, along with the County Attorneys Association. That's common sense transparency laws that are enacted in other states, either voluntarily or through statute. We need to have more accountability and transparency, not only in Lancaster County, but across the state. And that's something I'll advocate for down at the Capitol as well. And we'll practice what we preach in our office. Finally, accountability. The Lancaster County Attorney's Office is a very unique office, and that has unique jurisdiction because it's the only county that has the state capital and all the state government in its jurisdiction. For far too long, our Attorney General's office and the other offices that are supposed to provide accountability have not been doing that, whether it's things like not enacting Medicaid expansion after 2 years and the voters enacted it, or the child welfare contract debacle in Omaha. There has been very little investigation on the state level into these types of things. And given that all state government is located within the Lancaster County Attorney's Office, we have special jurisdiction to be able to investigate those things and look into them. And those are issues that deserve to be looked into. Now, whether or not those rise to a criminal nature or not, I mean, who knows? Probably not. But the public deserves to have an investigation in these things, and the public deserves to know. And I think that it's really important to be able to have political balance and oversight balance that, quite frankly, has not been provided on the statewide level for quite some time. So anyway, I could keep going on and on, but those are the kind of the three main priorities of mine and some of the substantive things that we'll actually do.
Well, that took care of the question about your priorities.
Okay.
It probably took care of this one too, but I'll ask it just in case you wanted that. So the state corrections crisis begins with law enforcement, begins in courtrooms. The question is, what contributions can be made on the county level to help with prison overcrowding and programming issues? I think you got to a lot of that with your last answer, but if there's anything else you wanted to add, you would be welcome to.
Yeah, I'll reiterate, and I'll try to do it a little bit more succinctly. I mean, the short answer is one of the main reasons why I am running is because, again, I think public safety is one of the top priorities and one of the biggest responsibilities for government. But two, because I've sat in the Judiciary Committee for the last 8 years and heard about all of the solutions that we could be having, solutions that make our community safer. And all of those solutions are opposed by Pat Condon as president of the County Attorneys Association across the state. And I keep hearing from my colleagues, and I see it firsthand, like Senator Lathrop, why aren't we able to make any progress on the negotiations? Well, the County Attorneys Association's throwing in a wrench here. They're throwing in a wrench there. They're dragging it out here. They're not coming to the table with good faith. And we've seen that time after time. So first, it requires leaders that actually want to get it done. And that's one of the reasons why I'm running. In order to do this, though, we also, as the second largest county and as the driver of mass incarceration in our state, we have got to start here locally. And by starting here locally, what that takes is, one, we have to start figuring out, one, who are we mad at and who are we afraid of? The people that we are mad at, the people that have substance abuse problems, have mental health issues, but aren't generally a threat to themselves or others. Those are folks that would be better served by having accountability, yes, but in the community corrections system, and where they're also getting the supports they need to get better, and to stay a productive member of our community and a safe member of our community. And so that's the first thing that we're going to do, is have screening, risk assessment screening, for all individuals that go in to the criminal justice system here in Lancaster County. We're going to assess whether they're a risk to themselves or others. If they are, we might have to hold them. If they're not a risk to themselves or others, which is the vast majority of folks, then what we're going to do is we're going to make them agree to some substance abuse and other types of substance abuse, mental health support types of systems, community correction systems. And then we are going to we're going to give them the opportunity to show us that they want to improve. And that has been proven to reduce recidivism, to increase public safety, and also, quite frankly, just be better overall for our community and our society. And so that's the first thing that we're going to do. The second thing that we're going to do is we're going to go down to the Capitol, and after we've enacted some of these programs, we're going to say, hey, they work, and here's the results. And here's how we as a state can provide more supports and more laws to other counties and other jurisdictions to be able to enact these common sense reforms that work in other states. So we are going to be, the county that shows that we can have positive results that increases public safety and makes it so that folks can get the help that they need while still having some of the accountability. But anyway, I won't go on much further because I think I've already answered the question in the other ones, but it starts with actually having a leader that wants to come to the table on this issue, which Mr. Condon has not been a leader, and you can go down and talk to anybody that's worked on criminal justice reform at the Capitol and confirm that. And two, it takes actual time, resources, and programs to do that. Now, I will say that Mr. Condon has talked about how he has opened up a few different problem-solving courts, and he's proud of that. And I think in general, that's great. What he won't tell you, and what criminal defense attorneys will tell folks, and not only just criminal defense attorneys, but current and former prosecutors in the zone office that I've talked to will say, is that he refuses to open up the criteria for access to those community corrections and those diversion programs. So you have a very narrow subset of people that actually qualify for them. And so we need to open up the criteria, and we need to make it based on an actual public safety, whether or not they're a risk to themselves or others, in a public safety approach, rather than just simple, this is the criteria that we think we should have, and regardless of whether you fit it or not, that's what we're doing.
All right. Well, we've worked through pretty much everything I was going to ask, except for my last question. So this is where Kent springs into action, but he can't ask you about water, groundwater, and he can't ask you about committee assignments in the legislature. So I can't wait to see what he does.
Okay, Kent, let's see it. I'm ready.
All right. From what you're talking about, I was going to ask if you thought that the office was adequately staffed. It sounds like you're talking about almost a makeover of the way the office operates, with bringing in new positions and changing. How do you envision that, and how do you think it's going to take a bunch more people to be able to do it?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of the actual staffing with the current attorneys, there's about 40 full-time attorneys down there and about 40 support staff. With the current attorneys, I think what we're going to do, not what I think, what I know we're going to do is, first, I'm going to take probably a 60-day assessment where I sit down with all the different divisions. I look at workload. I sit down with them. I ask them, what do you love about your job? What do you want to change? And then, by the way, here's our priorities. What do you think about those priorities? And where do we need more resources and to adjust? So the first 60 days will be an assessment period. I do think to answer your question, from the attorney staffing perspective, I don't think we'll need additional attorneys and staff to accomplish what we're doing. I think we'll need a reallocation of resources and time and capacity. In terms of the victim services approach, I do want to bring in a few in-house folks that are skilled in victim advocacy and victim services. And I also want to bring in somebody who is going to coordinate services for victims, mental health, substance abuse, those types of services for the victims, so that we can have wraparound services as well. But there's already some organizations and social workers and therapists and other types of resources that we can connect to in the community and not reinvent the wheel. So I would say that there's probably going to be at least one more full-time position, the ombudsperson position, the public guardian position. And then in addition, we'll probably have some victim services support folks. And then there might be another data person and policy person as well. And so I don't see a huge expansion. That being said, if these programs and services work the way that they have worked in other counties and in other jurisdictions, we are going to be reducing the amount of people likely in the county jail, which will increase resources for us to reinvest those resources into community corrections. And I've already talked to some of the county commissioners about what that looks like, and they've agreed that any resources that we free up in that sense, we can dedicate to community corrections, so that we have the therapists, the substance abuse professionals, the mental health professionals, ready to go to be able to help provide those services to folks in community corrections. So there might be some expansion of folks outside of the county attorney's office to supplement some of those strategies and approaches.
Do you have any intent to handle any cases, appear in courtrooms, etc.? Or if you're the county attorney, some have, some haven't?
Yeah, some have and some haven't. I mean, and the short answer is I actually think it's critical that the Lancaster County personally prosecute cases. So I absolutely intend to be in the courtroom. I intend to lead by example, and I will. That being said as well, I mean, the county attorney's office is not a small office. It's 80 full-time staff, 40 attorneys. It's essentially a large law firm. And so in a large law firm, you also need to have an administrator, a managing partner, for lack of a better term, that is also attending to the needs of the staff and providing policy and direction. So I'll be doing a lot of that, but I also fully intend to be in the courtroom. And I think it's important that the county attorney is.
You've mentioned the problem-solving courts a couple times. Do you see other areas that could be, problem-solving courts? Or you talked about the need to sort of expand the amount of people that can go into that. Are they set up to be able to do that, to take new clients, or whatever word you would use? And are there other areas that could be included? Because those seem to be good tools if they're wisely used.
Yeah, problem-solving courts are really important. And what I intend to do is, I mean, one, if we identify other types of problem-solving courts that we need, like I've heard from some folks, domestic problem-solving courts and things like that as well. If there are other ones that we identify that we need, we're actually absolutely going to add them and expand them in cooperation with the court system. I will say that the biggest concern that I have right now isn't the amount of problem-solving courts, it's the narrow criteria in which we allow people into those problem-solving courts. And so that is what we are going to expand. We are going to expand the criteria of people that are eligible to be in those problem-solving courts, and not make it just for people that just have squeaky clean records, which is pretty much the case right now, which leads to only certain types of folks, generally white and affluent folks, that are eligible for it. And so we need to expand that. And that's what I plan on doing, is increasing and expanding the criteria of the people that are eligible. More people will then go into those programs, and more people will be successful coming out of them. The other thing that's happening right now is particularly for folks with substance abuse problems. Substance abuse and addiction is a disease. It often takes 2 or 3 times of relapse in order for folks to get better eventually. I've seen that firsthand. Family members very close to me have had to go into rehab. I won't go into their names or anything, but let's just say they're very close to me. And so I've seen this personally. I grew up with it. Right now, what the county attorney does is they make everybody plead to the maximum sentence if they mess up once. And so what happens then is you have folks that are going into these problem-solving courts that have substance abuse problems that probably will relapse from time to time, that are then automatically felons if they just mess up once. And with these addiction issues, you can't simply just have a one-size-fits-all approach. You've got to have a little bit of nuance to it. And that's also what's leading to some of these mass incarceration issues. And it's not setting up these folks that have substance abuse issues for success down the road. Now, there has to be accountability. If you're coming and you're high, or you're on some type of drug, or you're drunk or something like that, and you're in a community corrections program or problem-solving court, there needs to be some consequences for that. But automatically charging them as a felony essential, or as a felon essentially, is also not the right approach. So I'm getting a little long-winded, but the bottom line is expand the criteria so we have more people eligible, and then also have better criteria governing, the use of those courts, and if there is a relapse or something like that.
Kent, this needs to be your last question, because you got to save me one more question.
I was going to say, Dave, I have questions.
I'm talking too much. I'm sorry.
Afternoon, and Dave will hang me. So, you glanced there on the idea of most of the people that get into the problem-solving courts are white. ...
Yep.
That brought to my mind the whole issue of sort of, I don't know, the discriminatory almost prosecution, where you get a county that's whatever percent white we are, and by far the people of color, and are prosecuted at a higher rate. Is that concern you?
It absolutely concerns me. It's 3 to 4 times more likely if you're a person of color to be involved in our criminal justice system and go to jail or prison in Lancaster County. And so that's a huge concern. And part of that, quite frankly, is this very narrow criteria that we have for diversion programs and problem-solving courts. It generally favors a certain type of person, a certain race of person, and we need to have a better approach, a more inclusive approach, to having access that's equitable to those alternative court systems. And that's exactly what we will do when I'm elected. And that's exactly what I intend to do. In addition, there's a whole bunch of other things that we need to work on, and that I will work on as the chief law enforcement officer with Lincoln Police Department and the Lancaster County Sheriff's Department, which is, community policing, bias training, all of those different things. Those are all things that we're going to work on together to really bring down some of those disparities and open up equity of opportunity for some of those alternative to incarceration programs. These are all things that have not been done by the current county attorney, and one of the big reasons why I'm running.
All right. So the last question for you, Adam, is what didn't we ask you that you wish we had?
You guys, you asked some pretty open-ended questions, so I had the opportunity. I had the opportunity to ramble on a lot. So sorry, Kent. I know you have some more questions. We can talk offline. So I guess one of the things that I think is really important to me is that. Well, let me step back. It's hard to know really where to start with that question, because there's a lot that I want to say, and I know we just got a minute or two. For the last 30 to 40 years, if not longer, we've had essentially the same type of person running the Lancaster County Attorney's Office. Somebody who is a career, generally very conservative prosecutor that is not very open-minded to new ideas, new approaches, even the evidence and fact-based ones. We've seen that time and time again in the legislature. And it's time to have somebody who's going to come in with new ideas, new perspective, who has a lot of experience with the criminal justice system, with the Judiciary Committee, with the creation of policy and law, and is also very skilled at building partnerships across the community and across the state. And that's what I'm going to be, is somebody who's open-minded, who is thoughtful, who is focused on public safety, and also focused on broader solutions, and ending the fact that the Lancaster County Attorney's Office and Lancaster County is, quite frankly, the driver of mass incarceration in our state, if you look at the data. And so that's going to be my approach. That's one of the big reasons why I'm running. I guess that's the contrast between my opponent and I. We need to have somebody that is in tune with the residents of Lancaster County, not opposed to, for instance, legalization of medical marijuana, which 80% of people in Lancaster County support. Also going to be clear on what they are going to do if there's an abortion ban. My opponent has said that he will enforce the law no matter what, as the legislature passes it. And if we pass a complete abortion ban, that's going to have serious consequences for women and their doctors who are trying to seek reproductive care. And then, quite frankly, enforcing that kind of abortion ban law will actually make our community less safe, particularly women. And so we need to have somebody who is in touch with the needs of the voters and the desires of the voters. And we also have to have somebody who's going to be a good faith partner in criminal justice reform, because it not only impacts Lancaster County and public safety here, it impacts the rest of the state. So
All
maybe
right.
that answered your last question. That was another open-ended question. So
It was. You made good use of your time, Adam.
okay.
All right. Well, we appreciate the time you spent with us today, and we wish you the best with your campaign, and thanks a bunch.
Well, I appreciate it, Dave. One last question for you. When do you guys plan on making decisions? I know that's probably a little bit of a moving target for you guys, but
It is, I because we're at a point where we have visited with both you and your opponent, we could talk about this as soon as Monday with the editorial board. Folks will have a chance to read. So, our goal with all of these is to get our endorsements out there as soon as possible for early voters. And more importantly, we like to kind of jumpstart the conversation. Our endorsement isn't intended as the final word. It's intended as letter writers having open season on us. So, so that's what we're kind of going for. The sooner we can get it in, the sooner we can let the fun begin.
Okay, that sounds great. Well,
All
thanks
right.
a lot, Dave. I appreciate it. Thank you, Kent. And if
Okay.
you guys have any other questions, please let me know.
Thanks, Adam.
All right,
care.
thanks, Adam.
See
Bye.
ya.